Hello, demon folk. Welcome to another episode of Demon Folklorist. I am, as you have probably guessed, the Demon Folklorist, the only one in existence, for now anyway. So, today we are going to be talking about possessed places. I happen to be a geomantic psychic, so I can feel the energy of cities and places. Sometimes states overall, sometimes even what's going on in the earth. It's not always, it's mostly cities. But this was a great question that was posed to me by Gabby. So shout out to Gabby, because ask questions, guys. I will build an entire episode around your question. And honestly, I just like to answer questions anyway. So even if I didn't build an entire episode, don't be afraid to ask. I want to answer your questions, okay? Because I can't tell what you don't understand if you don't tell me. Get me? All right. So eventually this is going to be turned into a book, because I want to explore all the states and many, many cities across the U.S. I haven't done as much traveling as I would like to. And then it's the same with other countries too. That will be a much bigger book, probably much later on in my career, but we'll get there. All right. I think places can be possessed, just like people, filled with energy that isn't our own, and then that energy defines and absorbs all of it. When your energy doesn't align, there's an energetic schism that seems to happen. It doesn't want you there. It wants you to leave. I've even had friends talk about conforming to that energy, and then suddenly things in their life got much, much easier. And I did. And things got a little bit better, although that energy carried with me to Wyoming. And Wyoming is not a good place. It has what I believe to be a dead core. But I'll talk about that in a bit. I'm going to start kind of like, I've lived in a lot of different places. So as a geomantic psychic, it's like, well, shit. Like, I've had to adapt and change so many different times. But now as an adult, I've told my husband, baby, I cannot rent a place unless I walk through it. I cannot live in a place unless I have been there. I have to. It's not a question. And it's because there is darkness and I can feel it. And if I get any hint of it, I cannot live there. At least not like, every single city has darkness. Every single city has shady areas. You know what I mean? Like, so what it's more about is the darkness in the city, in the core? Because this is the way I just kind of think of things. So if you've ever read Madeline L'Engle's, what's that series called? A Wrinkle in Time. It talks about these, like, the whole plot is like, they get transported to this like space adventure, kind of heavens, celestial. They end up going to different planets, and they talk about this one, Camazotz, where it has taken over. And it is this big old, like, dark presence that offers freedom for people, but through slavery of like a hive mind, right? Like the Borg. And it's just like, we will either offer it to you freely or we will take your freedom from you and you'll just become part of it, right? Camazotz is a world that gave up. So I think of cities as having cores, like a heart, the heart of the city. And sometimes that core is dead. It really depends on the city, honestly, whether there's a live core or a dead one. Certain cities I've lived in definitely had a dead core, or it had chosen, if you think of like cities as choosing, I have no idea how that works, but that's just how I sort of visualize it, and I sort of like conceptualize it for myself. The idea that places have like energy that they hold, and that, is it good? Is it evil? And by evil, I mean negative and harmful to humans in this instance. Is it neutral? Does it not really care? So I think of cities as sometimes being thinking only as far as the entities that are thinking for that heart and are operating from that city's like core energy. So I hope that made sense, because that was a bit of a ramble. Anyway, let's see. I have lived in many, many different places. So I lived in Northern California in Yuba City because my dad was stationed at Luke. He was in the Air Force for 29 years. And I let's see. I don't remember any of that, right? I was a baby. But if you remember from the psychic episode, I was already like a fully formed psychic in the womb. So, anyway. Next was Arizona. I remember loving it there, and I don't have a ton of memories because I was a happy child. You know, my parents loved me. I was so happy. I was like a little tiny ball of sunshine and energy. Like, just happy to be alive, you know, and my childhood was wonderful. And my sister came along when I was 3, and I was so excited to meet her. I was not always the best sister later in life, and I think a lot of it weirdly had to do with psychic stuff. Growing up as a psychic is not easy. And, you know, if you have questions about that, definitely ask, because it can be so hard just to exist as a burgeoning psychic. I would argue you feel much more messed up than the average teenager. I wasn't always as kind to her as I could have been. And I deeply regret that because I love my sister to death, you know. She doesn't hold it against me. She's a wonderful person. But I consider it my duty to make it up to her. Anyway, I miss my family. I'm living in Mexico now, and they're back in Wyoming. And, you know, like it's hard doing moves. I moved here with my husband, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing that I'm here, and I'm happy to be here. But I miss my family. That's all. But I'll see them soon. So anyway, so Arizona is interesting. I have driven through there several times, and the second I see these big, beautiful canyons and the red earth, and there is something very spiritual about Arizona. Something very beautiful. I haven't even been to Sedona. My mom talks about it. She's been there because we used to live there, and my mom, like, she went to Tombstone and the OK Corral and like all sorts of fun stuff, right? While she was there, and one of the places she went was Sedona. And of course my mom like is sort of finding out that there is something there when psychics say so, because they're like, oh, well, Sedona, like it's amazing. And that's exactly what she thought going in. And then she's like, oh no, it is amazing. Oh my God. Like, apparently the Sedona vortex, there is some very serious positive light energy there. And I've never been, but I can't wait. I'll go back someday. And yeah, I'd like to feel that. I'm interested in these places, these possessed places, because I think even light can possess a place, and good. But in that case, you know, it's not really called a possession. It's more like embodied or incarnate or fused, or, you know, like there are some other really great vocab words I'm not thinking of right now, but you know what I mean. Like, it is an inherent part of that place now. But when it's good, we don't call it possessed, do we? So, something to think about. But yeah, Arizona has very beautiful energy, and I happen to like the heat. So maybe someday I'll end up living there. We'll see. Then we moved when I was very, very young. I was about 3 or 4, I think I was 4, to England. And my whole family loved it there. That was one of the last times that we all felt very good geomantically as a family, because my family has it too. My mom has it. My sister has it. So my dad, I think he feels it too, but in like more of a mundane way. Like, I think psychics feel it in a very spiritual, in their marrow type of way when they're a geomantic. But my dad feels it as, I either like it here or I don't like it here, you know? And I think everybody has a modicum of psychic talent and psychic ability. So what you feel as vibes are actually psychic ability of your body trying to warn you of something, right? England was a beautiful place, and when I went back, I wasn't paying as much attention. I wasn't as deeply involved in my psychic stuff at the time, but it was wonderful, and it was lovely and soft is how I would describe it from what I remember. Soft and beautiful and rainy, but in a non-depressing way. More like curling up with your favorite sweater and getting in bed and just feeling soft and cozy and delicious with something warm in your hand. Also, if you can hear the traffic going on outside, I'm sorry. Mexico is not like the US. Like, it is not quiet here, even in the middle of the night. So I have to wear earplugs, but I have to do that anyway because I'm a freak. Anyway, so then we moved after that when I was 8 to Montana. Now, Montana is beautiful. It also is horrible. And okay, that's a strong statement. Back that up. So it is so beautiful because it really is the big sky state. Like, if you really think you've seen the sky, you have not seen the sky until you go to Montana. It's hard to explain. Just go do it. Just go see the sky. Go do it. I loved it. I loved the summers there, even though they were a little too hot. But I'm one of those people who loves hot instead of cold. But the cold there, it gets into your bones. Snowfall can be beautiful, but it became slush. And cold got into us and we became bitter. And I could feel those things as a child, you know, even though if I couldn't fully express it, but I had the words later to explain exactly why I fucking hate winter. It's not that winter can't be beautiful. It can, absolutely. There are even times when I'm like, yeah, I want to go up to like Norway or Switzerland and get in like a cute little warm cabin and just watch the sky, you know, snow. Like it's a mood, but in certain places like the Midwest, honestly, winter isn't a mood. It's a state of mind. It's a darkness that settles over things. It's hard to explain unless you've been to the Midwest, I think. And it makes you very bitter and angry, and you're so cold. You can't stop it. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, I think I'm a total weirdo, but anyway. I don't like the cold, okay? But there was a sadness there, and it made me sad, and it fucked with me. It really did. So there's that. Also, there were a lot of, like, I think this might be because of, like, Air Force families. Like, there is a lot of sniping and snarkiness and bad behavior in those communities. Yeah, it was weird. And my mom was not well accepted, and neither was I, to be honest. I think I had some of my worst friend experiences in Montana because I have always been, and now I've just embraced it, you know, like as an adult, I've stopped running from the fact that like, oh, people were so mean to me, because they were mean to me. They were so mean to me. And I was an awkward kid. I was not ugly. And that's what they called me. And that's so fucking sick to tell a child, you know? Like, especially from another child's mouth, right? But kids can be cruel, for sure. But my experiences there were largely very bad. And my friends were awful to me, and I was awful back out of a defense mechanism. Because I grew up, it's kind of like with Salem. Salem, my black cat. By the way, I have a new cat named Butterscotch, nicknamed Butters. And yeah, he's a little tiny kitty. But Salem and Butters are a really good example of this. Salem has this habit of walking up to cats and getting in their face. He's not doing it to be mean or to be weird or to be anything except friendly. He's like, oh, hi, hello, who are you? Do you want to be my friend? Now, with Butters, it's the exact same thing. Butters is a very sweet, loving cat who loves humans. I've never seen him around another cat, but he's very curious about them. We have a bunch of stray cats in this area that people feed and care for. And yeah, he's just like, hey, hi, what's up? Who are you? And I think Salem and Butters are going to get along very well. Like, I think actually Salem might be like, I don't know, man. I don't know about you. But they'll warm up soon and just fall completely in love. Because Salem does have those fatherly instincts. And Butters is just, he's a little ball of light, you know? And they remind me of who I was. I was a little ball of light too. And I felt love, and I apparently loved a little too deeply, and people were mean to me, and it was horrible. It gave me a biting wit, so I can't completely pretend like I got nothing out of this, because I like that I could cut you down with just a look, you know? I like that my words are like a Ginsu knife between my teeth, you know? If I need it, not to just do that to do it. You know what I mean? I do believe in kindness, even especially with the darkness of our world right now. I do believe in kindness and I do believe in love, but there are also people who have turned away from that, from kindness and love, and it sucks. Anyway, I'm just waxing poetic on my podcast right now. Sorry, y'all. Let's get back to possessed places. But the fact is, these experiences that I'm describing to you are why it was so bad. You know, it was almost like, I don't think it was the Earth's energy of Montana. I remember Montana being very beautiful and the summers being wonderful. I loved it there, right? But yeah, the winters were horrible. And I think that was when probably primarily things got bad. So, let's see, I was about 11 when I moved from Montana to Southern California. But yeah, that was what was really informing that experience in Montana. But Southern California, I have always felt like Southern California, or really just California, is home to me. I love it. When I went back, California said, "Welcome home. We've missed you." That's what the land said to me through my clairaudience, which is clear hearing if you don't know. It just communicated such feelings of peace, and we are protecting you. Don't be afraid here. We would never let anything happen to you. Do you know what that feels like? To be protected in such a way. It's like with your spouse or with your parents, or, you know, it's this very beautiful sense of home. But I'll come back to that. But my family does not feel the same way. They didn't have the same experience. Neither did my sister. That was where some of her friend problems started. And she hates it there and she doesn't want to go back. And it's like, I get it. I do. I feel differently because California is home to me. It calls to me. I may live in Mexico now, but I will never feel like this is home. No matter if I learn the language, which I am, and all that stuff. It's just not home. After Southern California, I was about 16. So we lived there for about 5 years. And actually that was in Southern California when I was about 14. That was when I met my now husband. So I guess I'm definitely in that demographic of people who met their husbands before they were 17 years old. It was kind of crazy. He was a friend of mine in high school. So then what happened? I went, let's see, where did I go? Can't even remember. Illinois. I try to block this part out. Illinois was strange. We got there during winter. Although Illinois almost seems to be in a struggle for power at its core. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. When springtime comes and the flowers start to bloom and things grow back, it is the most glorious smell. And being outside feels good. And even though, like, you can't really tan there, because I guess the humidity is so intense, it basically blocks out the sun. Me and my friend Jen, we tried to tan that summer and we didn't get far because of that humidity, which is like a wet blanket on your head when it really gets going. But in that beginning of spring, like, I love to sit outside and just read because that's my idea of a good time. I'm definitely kind of a Southern girl at heart. Pretty printed dress, iced tea, sweet iced tea, of course. A book in my hand, like that's my ideal. But yeah, so Illinois wasn't a terrible thing fully all the time, but in the place that we lived, like, there was something there. I don't think it was in the house exactly, but I think it was nearby. I would have to leave every Sunday because I've just felt such an intense amount of dark energy building up after the week. So I would, like, literally go to the next town over because that's where my friends were and just hang out. So that's what I did to deal with that part. What else? Illinois was it was a strange place. And the high school was haunted. Haunted as fuck. I hated it. I wanted to leave. Every time I was there, I felt something dark. And actually, in the psychic episode, if you haven't listened to that yet, my sister tells a story. It was in that school. We both felt it. Because our abilities are more heightened than other people's. But my abilities just weren't as developed. But it wasn't as hostile in the spring and the summer. I found that basically everywhere. In Wyoming, it's the exact same thing. It was only in winter when an ugliness and a darkness sort of poisoned everything. It was total isolation. But even though in those warmer days, like I said, I needed to leave because I spent too many days there. And then I'd just go to the neighboring towns like Mascoutah or Belleville or wherever. Let's see where else. So where did I go after that? Went to Nevada. Nevada was funny. There was beauty there. I could feel it. I was taking a Nevada history class at the time, which of course didn't count for later because it's for Nevada, as I was trying to do community college. Their community college was a bit of a shit show, and I had trouble getting what I needed. So I just sort of took anything I thought was interesting. So there's a freedom in that, but it doesn't get you far towards earning your degree. But I took at least like core classes, so it worked out. But I took a really great mythology class there that I just absolutely loved, and that's kind of where I had always loved mythology, and I didn't really know what folklore was. It wasn't as defined. It was like a discipline, and it has been a discipline for a very long time. I didn't know about folklore just yet, or how much I was in love with it. But I did really love mythology, and I do have a special place in my heart for mythology because that's what I grew up on. Especially Greek mythology, but Norse is fascinating, Chinese, all of it. I really just love all of it. I can't wait. Like, my idea of, like, beach reading, honestly, is to just sit with, like, a book of mythology or folklore or something like that. Or horror. You know me. I love horror. What was my point? I had some very interesting, even beautiful experiences there because I would walk around the neighborhood, which was very safe, moneyed, fairly nice. This was like a $500,000 home that someone was renting out, and it was because they were in a situation like ours. They had to move to Louisiana because he was in the Air Force. So they wanted to rent to someone else in the Air Force. You know, they even dropped the price a bit. Like, it was great. And it was a beautiful home. I didn't like the way they painted it, but that was the only thing. Like, that was a gorgeous, gorgeous house. So big and light, and I loved it. And, you know, like, the area was beautiful, too. I would walk around, and this Nevada history class comes into play because they talked about how Native Americans and early settlers of awful colonialism and manifest destiny and all that shit would come in, and they would have these experiences in the desert, and how beautiful it was, and it was star-filled, and it was beautiful, and it was spiritual, that type of thing. And it got me thinking about, like, how did the Native Americans see this place? What was that like? You know? And then you get into the heart of Las Vegas. The Strip, I don't think the Strip is evil. It's like Sin City, whatever, but that's not what I get from it. It's more like, because you can have good, clean-hearted family fun there. Are you going to see some boobs? Probably. Not out, but like, you know, major cleavage and parts of butts and, you know, like, you're going to see a little nudity and some debauchery, right? For sure. Some skullduggery. But it's not inherently evil on the Strip. I have fun on the Strip. Like, I think it can be lots of fun if you know your hotel and you love your hotel. Because that's a thing that, like, locals know about. You have to know your hotel, get a good room and a good rate, and then you lay by the pool. I've heard, though, like, some very scary things about Vegas pools. So, proceed with caution. I don't know if I'll be getting in them. And it is very, very hot there. It's like crazy hot. But I thrive in much hotter climates than anything else. So I didn't care. And then, yeah, it was beautiful. And it was also dark. Because the dark heart of the city is not there. It's not on the Strip. It's actually downtown, where I was held in the mental institution down there. I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to name them. You know, I don't want them to sue me. But it was the most awful experience I've ever had. Mental institutions there, I think, are overrun and underfunded. It was not a good time. And I did not feel safe there. And I felt there was huge amounts of control that people were trying to exert. And it's because of this dark core. It was nearby. And it was feeding on people. And mental institutions, like, if I really had to think about it, prisons and mental institutions are probably the best places for demonic activity. I'm not saying that's what was happening. I did not, witness anything demonic or feel anything demonic here, but I wouldn't be surprised, that type of thing. So anyway, Las Vegas had it was almost like it was made up of multiple cores, good, beautiful parts that felt spiritual. And then other parts where you were like in the belly of the beast, in the valley of the shadow of death. So it was like, it was very strange. It had multiple cores or a struggle going on for good and evil. So there's that. And then after that, I was about, how old was I? I had to be about 21. We moved 21 or 22. We moved from there to Wyoming because my mom had family from Cheyenne. She was like, yep, this feels right. I don't think so. Personally, I've never liked Wyoming, and it has never liked me, and that's been so much fun to deal with. It feels like Wyoming has a dead core. Like, it doesn't have a fight anymore, and if something is there, because I've felt something sort of stir at different times, usually during the winter, but then be asleep in the summer. But by a dead core, I mean it is a city that has given up. It has not, it doesn't really have light or dark, it's just bitterness. And it feeds into the people, because if you've ever really like been to Cheyenne for long periods of time, or if you've ever lived there, you know for sure the people there are bitter. So it's never been a pleasant experience for me. Also, it is way high the fuck in the air, like crazy high. So it's not healthy for your body to be up there that high for that long, to be breathing in less air. Like, personally, my body went through hell there. I developed stomach issues. Basically, I couldn't really like process food super well because my body just didn't like to be up there. I'm from sea level. I'm a sea level creature, and it was bad. And I also had to drink special artisanal water or wellspring water, anything that had extra minerals in it, just to keep it in my body, because I never felt satiated. Like, I was always hungry, always thirsty. And then when I went to the South semi recently, I'll talk about that in a minute, I realized that I actually eat a lot less when I'm in other places. And this happened in California as well. Like, I eat for sure, but I am not like this like empty maw like I am in Wyoming. It feels like I'm constantly eating because my body can't hold it or something. It was weird. I just didn't enjoy my time there. All right, what's next? So after Wyoming, I moved to Utah for 2 years, and that's where the Logan story comes in. Logan was one of my strongest bad experiences, and it was so subtle at first because my mom also slept in that city, so did my sister, and they just didn't have the same experience. And I think it's because Logan doesn't show its face right away. It takes time. And that's how it wears you down, because it's sort of like a sucker punch. It started with the bad luck. It started basically the second I stepped foot there. I would have to end up going back and forth between Ogden and Logan, which is like an hour's drive. And if you've ever had to commute like that, you know how awful it is. And it started with my first apartment that I wanted to rent. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. On my first day of teaching ever, I was stung by a bee. And that's just the tip of that iceberg. My PowerPoint didn't work when I first started teaching. Like, here's the thing though, I hated teaching. I hated doing it. I had a horrible undiagnosed anxiety disorder. I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm trying to like remove the stigma around it, because you don't have to feel this way. Now, medication does not work for everyone, so I don't want to just be like medication, but just so you know, it helps so much. And really, my anxiety was keeping me from doing the things that I love to do. I do love to present about demons, and once I forget that I am up there talking and everyone's staring at me, I tap into my own potential. And I want to see that for everybody. So anyway, off on a tangent. We'll come back because I have notes here. Anyway, so Logan was a whole different experience. There were things about teaching that I loved. Like, I was able to convert folklore into curriculum, and there was a little bit of pushback from the school about that. I think the kids there didn't think I was teaching a real subject, because I was teaching composition, right? Which is, intro to writing for college. But I was doing it in such a way that I guess was so genius and so different that they did not think that I was teaching writing. And it's like I was using folklore to teach writing. Eventually, because this kept happening and people basically tried to like tell on me and be like, oh, she's not even teaching English. Nah, nah. And it's like, why? Because it's not boring. I had this, she was technically the head of all of the new teachers. I didn't like this woman very much, but I liked her as a human, just not as a teacher, if that makes sense. She was like, not every lesson can be fireworks. And it made me immediately go, well, why not? Why can't every lesson be fireworks? Why can't I use the fascinating things that I am learning about, that I already know about, to teach? One of my favorite assignments I ever did was, and feel free to use this, like, let me know if it's something that you want to do. I can give you notes and stuff. But if you want to utilize this, because I feel like ideas are kind of free, at least in like curriculum. So for the month of October, I did the Salem witch trials and how to write an argumentative paper using the Salem witch trials as a prompt. Because there are so many different theories and we truly don't know exactly what happened, because I think it was actually a combination of many, many different things happening. It was social, it was economic, it might have been fungus that was making everybody trip balls. Like, it could have been all sorts of things. But I used it to be like, what do you think happened with the Salem witch trials? And I taught them all about the different theories that are out there. Like, what do you think was going on? And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Kids loved my class. Like, from even my first ever class was a fucking disaster. I was not well prepared by the school to teach my own class, and I hated the curriculum that they had because it didn't interest me. I can't do things that don't interest me. And then the second time around, my second semester, I was pissed. And sometimes fury for me creates, these moments where I'm like, okay, let's just do this, but I'm going to do it my way. Anyway, this was a major part. The reason I'm even telling this story, truly, it has a purpose, I promise. It is because this was a major factor in why my life was a hellhole in Logan, right? But it wasn't just that. I felt sick there. It was like something was trying to poke holes in my aura and was completely succeeding. My luck was fucking gone. I didn't even realize luck was something outside of yourself until I moved there. It was bad. And I couldn't do anything about it. I didn't understand. I was from a Christian background. Basically, unless you are from a folk Christian background, you are not taught how to deal with this stuff, because it kind of, like, being even a psychic in general sort of goes against what they see as right. And it's like, I'm not bashing Christianity. You do you. But don't hate other people, and don't, try to, like, stuff your beliefs down other people's throats. That's, like, my big issue with Christianity. Because guess what? I do believe in God. I believe in other things too. And I also believe that psychics have to do things differently. Living for us is hard. Okay, it's not easy, and we have to adapt and grow, and some of those ways are a little witchy. But Logan was a sick place, and I found out there were tunnels underneath it. And this thing, that's why I couldn't get a lock on it. It moved, and what it looked like to me was, like, if you've ever seen the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves from like 2004, 2005, there's this scene where a demon tries to manifest onto our plane. And it looks like bugs are creating a body. That's exactly what it looked like. I went through like a meditative walk through the city, and it was fucking weird. I saw strange things, like, and this could be totally my imagination. I am totally willing to admit I have a colorful imagination. But once I saw it in my mind's eye, I was like, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it feels like. Because it was tiny holes. What it felt like is that these psychic bugs had gotten onto your aura and were poking holes, but they were so tiny, you almost didn't notice it until you were severely weakened. I was so weakened there. It is a beautiful town. USU is a great school. But there was darkness underneath that. There was sickness underneath that, and I hated it. I lived there for 2 years finishing my grad degree, and I had to leave the second I could. I was really happy to get out of there, like so happy, even though it was going back to Wyoming. And then I unfortunately brought a lot of that bad luck back to Wyoming. So yeah, then back to Wyoming for an unfortunate 2 years, and then California for a short period of time. So let's see, what did I think about California? So the geomantic energy of California in general is very laid back, very chill. It seemed more frantic when I was living there as a kid, but energy of a city can completely change. So that's It might be where I was at. It could be where the city was at the time. It's hard to say. But California, as I was driving, because I get most of my clairaudient messages when I'm either in the passenger seat or I'm driving. I have music on and I'm just sort of like vibing out. Like, that's the easiest way for me to do it. And California said to me, "Welcome home. I'm glad you're here." And I was like, cool. Thanks for having me, I love California, and I'm living in Mexico right now with my husband, but eventually we are going to return because that feels like home to me. And I know my sister doesn't feel the same way, and my parents definitely don't feel the same way, but it's home to me. Now let's get into some of my vacations. So we are going to start with South Carolina, at least in like the Charleston area. I didn't like really leave there when I was there last summer for Atomicon. I like to go to different cons and talk about paranormal stuff. The energy of South Carolina was very welcoming. I felt earth magic, growing magic in the land. It was fertile, beautiful, green. It also told me itself in an entire poem I really wish I'd written down, starting with "The woods are lovely, dark and deep," like the poem, and then it told me, "And here the dead do sleep." Now, Charleston is supposed to be haunted as shit, but to me, it's not that it was saying that there was nothing haunted. More that I was welcome here, that the dead weren't going to bother me if I didn't want to talk to them, that I could put that barrier up and not have a problem. And I feel very drawn energetically to Charleston, even still. California's home to me, but, if I ever make any money off these books I'm writing, maybe I'll go have a home in Charleston or something. The pulse of the South is slower and happier to me. It's very peaceful. And I also went to Massachusetts, to Fall River, to the Borden House, and then to Salem for the day. I went with the Feminine Macabre group, and it was so much fun. But let's see. Massachusetts was interesting, and then it didn't really mind if I was there or not. I was neither welcome nor unwelcome, but I felt some darkness there. Not threatening darkness, just that it was there. It gave me a whole poem about itself, much like South Carolina did, and this time, because I was in the passenger seat, I wrote it all down. The entire poem is on my site, demonfolklorist.com, if you want to read it, but I felt a different type of magic resided there. Bone, runes, iron, blood type of magic. There was darkness in that there were all dark things in the trees, and there was also light there, though. It's a fascinating place. It's a chiaroscuro of light and dark. But I really loved my time there. I thought it was a lot of fun. But here's a specific question that Gabby asked. How did I feel visiting North Carolina? Did I have any psychic experiences there? So yes, I did, and they were not good. North Carolina was pissed that I was there. It's overpopulated, and I want you to leave, is what it said. That, like, I want you to leave because it's overpopulated. You don't belong here. You need to leave. There was intense pushback. And then there was some rookie mistakes that I had made. There are always rookie mistakes that you make. I'm still learning. So, like there were some things that it's like, oh, I should have done that, Because it didn't want to talk. It said to me only one word, serrated. And then it changed it slightly to serrated and rotted. It didn't want to talk to me, and it didn't want me there. So next year when I go to Con Carolinas, I'll be shielding heavily before I get there because fuck that. But it's been interesting, like as a geomantic psychic, I've really had a lot of experiences also because I was from a military family. I got to live in a ton of different places and feel different things and feel different ways of being home. And I think it really like made me more adaptable. California feels like home to me. So I will probably live there and maybe a house in the South. But yeah, so that was Possessed Places. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Demon Folklorist, and I hope you have on Possessed Places kind of day. See ya.